hosts. My sister is a transmigrator. She intended to grow up alongside me, but I was such a naive, sweet fool. She finished her mission quickly and was forced to return. Before she left, she shouted, "Oh, for heaven's sake, how are you so easy to manipulate? You must remember my words." But the plot was too powerful, and I slowly forgot I even had a sister. After I grew up, I fell in love with Prince Rui Pei Heng when he was being assassinated. As I prepared to take the sword for him, I suddenly remembered my sister. She had said I was the heroine of a tragic novel, hadn't she? My eyes suddenly cleared as I looked at Pei Heng. When I was 3 years old, a sister suddenly appeared by my side. I was shocked. When did mother give me a sister? How did I not know at all? Mother was completely bewildered. "What are you babbling about, child? Hasn't your sister always been here?" "What? No way. I'm the oldest daughter." At that very moment, I heard my sister's inner voice. "System, what is going on? Why hasn't the heroine's memory changed yet?" The system replied, "The tragic heroine is extremely stubborn. Modifying her memory consumes too much energy." It didn't succeed. My sister cursed. "Garbage." The system issued a cold warning. "Due to the host using profanity, 10 health points have been deducted. The system will be locked for 10 days. Why are you just like some software? You're just too shameless." 20 health points deducted. System locked for 20 days. My sister exploded. Her face flushed red with anger. She forced a fake smile at me. "Baby, no, little sister. My name is Song Yuhui. I am your own sister." I was so scared I turned and ran. "There is no monster on my sister. Why are you acting so strange today? I must be possessed by something evil." She dragged me to the temple to listen to a master chant scriptures. My head was buzzing from the noise. In order to get home sooner, I forced a sweet, obedient smile at mother. "Mother, I do have a sister. I'm all better now." My sister sighed in her heart about me. The tragic heroine's ability to adapt is truly incredible. She can accept such ridiculous things. I couldn't quite explain why, but I always felt she was insulting me. From then on, I accepted that I had a sister. My sister told me, "You are a tragic heroine. In the future, you'll take stabs and sword strikes for a scumbag. Take the blame for his poisons and kneel in the snow until you're half dead." Who knew that after that scumbag rises to power, he'll despise you for being old and withered, your body broken, unable to bear children, and he'll turn around and have kids with someone else. He'll even lock you in a dark room where no one can see you, and you'll only cry when you're 3, she said with a determined face. "This kind of scumbag must never be kept. How unlucky. Spit on him with me. Spit." Tui. My mother was horrified. "Song Yuhui, what kind of nonsense are you teaching your sister? It is one thing for you to be wild, but don't you dare corrupt her." My sister shouted, "Run, little sister." She turned and bolted. I followed closely behind. My mother chased us, lifting her skirts. Our laughter echoed through the courtyard. Once we reached a safe spot, my sister told me, "From now on, if someone wants to hit you, run away if you can. If you can't get away, then fight back. If you can't win, then play the fool. Once you're safe, sneakily get your revenge. Understand?" I shouted back. "I understand everything." Though I didn't know why she said that. I felt she had my best interests at heart. I felt that this sister the system had sent me was truly wonderful. I was very happy whenever I was with my sister. She would intentionally cause trouble and then trick me into taking the blame. But when I agreed, she would scold me. "Do you not have a mouth? Do you not have a brain? Whatever people tell you to do, you just go and do it? If you didn't do it, why should you take the blame? Can't you argue with me? Now shout with me. Whoever did it should take the punishment." She was very angry, a bit intimidating. I softly opened my mouth. "Whoever did it should take the punishment. If I didn't do it, I won't take it." "Shout louder. Didn't you eat?" I immediately shouted it again loudly. My sister was startled. "Wow, so fierce and so cute. Remember, never take the blame for others in the future. Someone who truly loves you wouldn't bear to let you take the fall. If someone makes you take the blame, it means you aren't important to them at all. Someone who doesn't care about you isn't worth your time. Tell them to get lost, understand?" I nodded. The system suddenly popped up. "Are you fishing for information? Mind your own business." "What do you mean by fishing?" Both my sister and the system went silent for a moment. Then my sister asked, "Can you hear it?" I nodded. "Yes." My sister and the system let out a piercing shriek. Warning, I'm going to wipe her memories." My sister protested. She heard it on her own merit. "What right do you have to erase them? Can't you just keep your mouth shut and stop blabbering? Do you have any idea that you're meddling?" Scared my sister. System, Song Yuhui, you're truly amazing. From that day on, the system never spoke in front of me again. Until the year I turned 6, the system suddenly played a notification sound. "Congratulations to the host for completing the conquest challenge. Current favorability has reached 100%. Challenge rewards have been settled. Host, please return to your original home. Countdown starting. 10, 9, 8, 7. My sister was horrified. "You silly girl. How could you be so easy to conquer?" System, are you playing with me? You just wait. I'm going to give you a bad review when I get back. Sister, you must remember what I told you. Stay away from that person name. Both my sister and the system vanished. I was terrified and ran crying to find my mother. Mother, my sister is gone. She was kidnapped by something called a system. My mother was completely bewildered. Where would you get a sister? Mother only gave birth to you. I was speechless and helpless. System, you set me up, didn't you? My mother took me to listen to the old monk chant again. This time, I got smart and said, I remember everything now. I never had a sister at all. It was all just me talking nonsense. The old monk at Wannon Temple gave me a deep look. Being too stubborn is not necessarily a good thing, benefactor. When the time comes to remember, you will naturally remember. It felt as if someone had forcibly stuffed something into my brain. From then on, I gradually forgot that I once had a wonderful sister named Song Yuhui, and I forgot about the system. At 14, the year of my coming-of-age ceremony, I made the acquaintance of Pei Heng. At 16, he came to my family's estate to propose. From then on, I became a little shadow trailing behind him, revolving around him every single day. As a prince, Pei Heng was titled the Prince of Rui. The current emperor favored the crown prince, but the crown prince was frail and sickly. His younger brothers were all restless and ambitious. The Prince of Rui was in the crown prince's faction, constantly protecting him. Outsiders thought he was being hypocritical, deliberately fawning over the heir apparent. They figured that if the crown prince were to fall, perhaps the emperor, seeing how hard the Prince of Rui had worked to serve the crown prince, would name him the next heir. The Prince of Rui was targeted by assassins. At the time we were returning from a spring outing, sitting in the same carriage, seeing a flash of cold steel. I subconsciously wanted to shield Pei Heng, but suddenly I was jolted awake. A woman's voice rang out in my head, roaring in my ear. Don't you dare hurt yourself. Your health is your greatest asset. Without it, you won't even have a seat at the table. Take good care of your own body. Did you hear me? Don't make me come over there and smack you. That woman was terrifying. I stopped immediately, grabbed a cushion from the carriage, and threw it at the assassin. The assassin's blade veered off by 3 inches, stabbing into Pei Heng's arm instead. Afterward, the assassins were wiped out. Pei Heng clutched his wound, staring at me with a dark, heavy gaze. Yuhui, what just happened to you? What do you mean, what happened to me? He actually had the nerve to ask. I asked righteously, why were those assassins trying to kill you? What did you do? It felt like someone had told me, the best defense is a good offense. I felt like I was beating him to the punch. Pei Heng was stunned, unable to believe it. I'm the one who is injured. Let's call off the engagement. Staying by your side is too dangerous. I just want to live a quiet, peaceful life. A restless scoundrel like you isn't right for me. I rolled my eyes at him with disdain and stepped out of the carriage arrogantly. I had it all figured out. My sister taught me to stay away from Pei Heng, yet I had actually gotten engaged to him. It was all that old monk at Wannon Temple's fault. I wanted to report him and leave him a bad review. Pei Heng was dumbfounded. He couldn't accept that I had just dumped him like that, but he was busy investigating the assassins, taking the chance to prune his rivals, and playing the victim in front of the emperor and the crown prince, so he had no time to deal with me. I was busy attending poetry gatherings, banquets, and tea parties, hitting 10 social events in 3 days, just to distance myself from Pei Heng. Within a few days, all the young ladies knew that I had broken things off with Pei Heng. We were in the middle of processing the annulment paperwork. Oh, what is the reason? What is the excuse? The Prince of Rui is such a wonderful man. I wiped my tears with a handkerchief, looking utterly miserable. He actually blamed me for not taking the blade for him, but I'm just a fragile girl who was scared out of her wits. Everyone suddenly understood, and they were filled with contempt for Pei Heng. Pei Heng cornered me, gritting his teeth. Is this how you're dragging my name through the mud out there? I blinked repeatedly. According to you, you would never want me to take a blade for you? Of course not. I'm not that low. Pei Heng scoffed coldly. I pressed him further. And you wouldn't let me block a sword for you? Certainly. Taste poison? Never. Taking the fall? Absolutely not. Kneeling in the snow? I'm not that kind of person. I still didn't quite believe him. Then are you willing to take blades and arrows for me? Test poisons, take the fall, and kneel in the snow. Pei Heng was stifled. Song Yuhui, how can you manage to piss so many people off? Sigh. A scumbag who won't have my back is not what I want. If I'm looking for a partner, I need someone capable. I turned and left. Pei Heng grabbed me tightly, resolute and firm. I am willing. Then you take the fall for this incident for me. I'm afraid people will badmouth me. I was unreasonable yet fully confident. Pei Heng looked at me utterly helpless. You weren't like this before. I scoffed. The old me was just ordinary, but the current me has experienced transmigration and the unbinding of a system. Pei Heng took the heat, admitting he was angry because I didn't take a blade for him, and prepared to break off our engagement. The emperor scolded him severely after hearing this, and told him to go back and reflect. Pei Heng wrote a letter. Look at the trouble you've caused. I burned the letter. Let the past turn to ashes. After Pei Heng was grounded, he invited me on an outing. Midway through the carriage ride, I sensed something was wrong. Pei Heng noticed my panic and said softly, I intend to go to Wannon Temple to pray for your blessings. I recalled the old monk's one-finger Zen at Wannon Temple. I decisively leaped out of the carriage, making faces at Pei Heng as I fled. A traitor. I knew he was trying to harm me. Pei Heng also leaped from the carriage, chasing closely behind. Song Yuhui, stop right there. You are not in a good state. I am perfectly fine. My mind has never been clearer. This stinking man just wants me to become a love-struck fool. I ran for my life, and he chased with all his might. We were both blocked by a group of people. There was no escape. I glared at him resentfully. See, going out with you always leads to disaster. Pei Heng's face darkened. He drew his sword to fight the assassins. In a moment, the guards rushed forward. The two sides clashed into a chaotic battle, seeing the danger approaching. When an assassin tried to put a blade to my throat, I threw a handful of sand, blinding the assassin. Pei Heng slashed the assassin down. His hot blood splattered all over my face. In the carriage on the way back, Pei Heng was at a loss for words. You insisted on going to Wan'an Temple. You just wanted the bald donkey at Wan'an Temple to turn me into a fool who would shield you from disaster. If I hadn't been smart enough to throw that sand earlier, I would have been kidnapped by now, or long since turned into a cold corpse. I come from a respectable family, and I only hope to live a steady, peaceful life. If you cannot provide that, what right do you have to come and ask for my hand? You have your own schemes, but have you ever asked what kind of life I desire? Pei Heng's eyes turned red. He looked desolate. Yuhui, I admire you. My heart skipped a beat. My mind felt dizzy. I realized my love-struck brain was about to emerge. Suddenly, my sister's voice echoed in my heart. You silly girl. Loving someone means never putting your partner in danger. Don't listen to his nonsense. Look at what he has done. Would your parents, knowing there was danger, still lead you into the jaws of it? Absolutely not. They would only want to protect you and ensure you grow up healthy and safe. That is what steady love is. Don't be blindly moved. To him, you aren't actually that important. Excellent. The love-struck brain has been discarded. I stare at him intensely. Thank you. I love myself too. Someone as wonderful as me should be curled up comfortably in a pile of gold and silver, not out there risking my life. I turn around and leave. Pei Heng roars in anger. Shouldn't partners face life and death together? Should one only enjoy the glory and never weather the storms? If that is the case, what kind of partners are we? I stop in my tracks. I should have just walked away, but I feel so aggrieved. We are all just ordinary mortals. On what grounds does he get to claim the moral high ground? What exactly do you like about me? Just liking you. Liking me from the very first time we met. You're lying. You haven't even dared to examine your own heart. What you like is this face of mine. My youth, my beauty, my vibrancy. If I were no longer young or beautiful, with skin like old tree roots, would you still want to like me? No. You would only be disgusted by me, finding me an eyesore, and telling me to get as far away as possible. You also like my figure, my graceful, slender form, my elegant curves. If I were to train until I was covered in thick muscle, would you still want to like me? You wouldn't. You'd only praise me to my face for being as bold as a man, but secretly, you'd mock me for being a tomboy. You also like that I'm healthy, capable of bearing children. Ahem. If I were unable to bear children, becoming a permanent invalid, would you still want to like me? You wouldn't. You'd only regret why you ever married me. You'd even run off to have children with someone else, while adding insults about me being barren. You also like my family background, that my father is a trusted official of the emperor, that my mother comes from a prestigious clan. If my father were just a lowly clerk, would you like me? If my mother's status were humble, would you even bother to look at me twice? If I were just a village girl from the countryside, would you still come to my home to propose? You wouldn't. You'd only take me as a concubine, and even despise my lowly background. What you fancy is nothing more than these things. These are my bargaining chips. What is wrong with me looking out for myself? Unlike you, who clearly knows what is important to a young woman, yet you drag me into these schemes time and time again. What kind of malicious intent do you have? Pei Heng is quite flustered, his hands not knowing where to rest. He tries desperately to clarify the situation. I didn't think that much about it. I am not that kind of person. Even if you were unable to bear children or didn't have a good family background, I would still be willing to love you. I don't believe his nonsense at all. You have no idea how terrifying the situation is, because you know, I am just a beautiful, healthy girl who can bear children. If you want to put yourself in my shoes, why not try being disfigured, crippled, and unable to reproduce? See how much of the gossip others heap upon you and how scary it is. If you can withstand the pressure without harboring resentment, only then can you come and accuse me of being wrong to scold you. If you do harbor resentment, it proves that you are not worthy of asking a girl to weather the storms with you, because you are no different from the people who criticize you. You run to visit your crown prince brother every time, pretending to be a devoted brother in front of him, but in reality, you can't even be sincere with the crown prince. You carry the arrogance of the healthy, looking down upon a patient. The crown prince is no fool. He can see it clearly. If you haven't offered sincerity, don't expect others to offer theirs. If you haven't acted with kindness, without worrying about the consequences, then don't accuse others of being timid, always calculating their future. Scram, you pathetic man, get lost. Ugh. The day Pei Heng returned to the city, he was carried back in a sedan chair. The city gossip claimed that Pei Heng had been ambushed, his face scarred and his body stabbed, and he had been drugged as well, leaving him unable to stand, and stripped of his ability to father children. Imperial physicians rushed to the Prince Rui estate in droves, and left in droves shaking their heads. The emperor was furious, and ordered a strict investigation. My parents forced me to visit Pei Heng, since I was, after all, his bride-to-be. I didn't want to go, but due to the pressure of propriety, I went anyway. Once my parents finished their consolations, only Pei Heng and I were left in the room. His face was covered in red rashes, looking quite terrifying. His body was gaunt, slumped in a wooden chair, one leg wrapped in white cloth, his eyelids drooping. He looked utterly defeated. I was quite surprised. How could he let himself get into such a state? After you slipped away, another group of assassins arrived. Pei Heng gave me a resentful look. Because you took the carriage and all the horses. I was unlucky enough to be bitten by the dogs while trying to escape. But you've been disfigured? And you can no longer father children. Pei Heng glared at me. Don't dream of it. There is a type of poison that, when ingested, causes breakouts on the face and leaves the whole body weak, effectively rendering one a cripple. Imperial physicians can't detect it through the pulse. One only needs the antidote to recover. You will still be my wife. I felt a little disappointed. Then you must guard that antidote well. If you lose it, that would be a disaster. Pei Heng sneered. Don't worry. I certainly won't let you find it. I stood up, hands on my hips, and stared at him. If we don't even have that much trust between us, what kind of marriage is this? If I wanted to harm you, it would be easy. I could just feed you another dose of poison. I truly don't believe that if two poisons were mixed together, the toxicity wouldn't change. By then, even if you were holding the antidote, it wouldn't be able to cure your illness. Pei Heng was horrified. He immediately summoned the steward and gave repeated instructions. No one is to be allowed to take advantage of the situation. He even sent for a physician to stay in her room, and every time before she takes her medicine, it must be tested. He even gathered the guards to seal her room so tightly that even if a moth tried to fly out, it would be hacked to pieces. Once he finished all this, he swore to me, "Thank you. I knew all along that you cared for me. My mistake. Next time I should sew my mouth shut." I walked away fuming. Pei Heng shouted after me, "Song Yuhui, I have been thinking about what you said. What you said might actually be logical. I am not a woman, so I cannot understand your fears. I am also physically strong, so I cannot empathize with the crown prince. But I am certainly not a heartless person. If someone has suffered so much for my sake, I absolutely cannot turn a deaf ear and trample on their sincerity." I turned my head to look at him with a look of disdain, completely misunderstanding the situation. A truly kind person could never bear to see others suffer through such bitter times, and would never wish for others to risk their lives for them. "Pei Heng, you'd better watch yourself." Pei Heng was utterly shocked. I sneered, and walked away with my head held high, thinking that my own stature is imposing and strong. Pei Heng, in terms of perception, couldn't catch up to me even on horseback. Pei Heng was crippled, and all the attention that was once on him shifted to the other princes. He went from being a top contender for the throne to an obsolete bystander in an instant. Following that, the pity and gossip directed at him increased significantly. I suffered along with him, becoming the most pitied girl in the city. I could even get special discounts when shopping on the street, so I enjoyed my shopping trips even more. But some people just couldn't stand the sight of me. "Song Yuhui, Prince Rui is ill. Why aren't you there to keep His Highness company? How do you have the leisure to shop here? I can tell your heart isn't with the prince at all." The one clamoring was the third daughter of Minister Zhao's family. We had met Pei Heng at the same time back then, but Pei Heng only had eyes for me. After I got engaged to Pei Heng, she has remained single to this day. I heard she insists on seeing me marry Pei Heng before she'll give up. I gave her a cold glance, feeling a bit of contempt for her. I had long since stopped being a lovesick fool, but she still was. I leaned into her ear and whispered, "Are you secretly in love with Prince Rui? What are you talking about? You're just spouting nonsense." Zhao Sanyang was both angry and anxious, jumping with rage. I whispered like a devil, "If you aren't, why do you keep staring at me? You just want to see how deep the feelings between the prince and me are. You try every way to smear my name, just because you're jealous of me. You wonder why the one who gets to be with Prince Rui is me, and not you. You adore him, yet you're too afraid to admit it. You're a coward, who only dares to act tough in front of me. If you have the guts, go tell Prince Rui you love him to his face. As long as you dare to say it, I'll give Prince Rui to you right now." "Really? Can you really let him go?" "Why wouldn't I be able to let him go? Prince Rui has a ruined face, is crippled, and cannot have children. Only a fool would want to marry him. I won't allow you to insult Prince Rui like that. He will definitely recover sooner or later." I snorted, reached out, and grabbed Zhao Sanyang by the shoulder, forcing her to look at Pei Heng sitting in his wheelchair behind us. Zhao Sanyang was scared and wanted to slip away, but I grabbed her tightly, making her stand still. This shameless woman only dared to spew filth in front of me. Today, I'm going to make her say those words to Pei Heng. "Say it. Is your love for Prince Rui really that hard to speak of?" Zhao Sanyang was furious. She gathered all her courage. "Your Highness, this young woman, this young woman admires you. Pei Heng slowly removed the mask covering his face and said coldly, with this face of mine, do you still love me? Parts of it were oozing yellow fluid, looking disgusting and terrifying. Zhao Sanyang trembled all over. You're truly bold. I'll go tell the Empress right now. And give Prince Rui entirely to you. Your devotion to him has even moved me. No. This young woman was just joking. Please, your highness, have mercy. She ran faster than a rabbit. What a coward. I pushed Pei Heng's broken wheelchair, and as we went to the crown prince's birthday banquet together, Pei Heng said, you intentionally arranged to meet me here because you guessed she would come to pick a fight with you. Cheech, she has been hounding me for 2 years, and it is not the first or second time she has blocked my path at the treasure pavilion. When she gave me a hard time, you told me to just endure it. She made you lose face, yet you took your anger out on me. Pei Heng, I am merely your bride-to-be, not your servant. My sister once told me that marriage is the smallest form of slavery. I didn't quite understand it before, but now I finally do. Just because I am someone's fiancé, I must unconditionally tolerate all his flaws, endure his outbursts of temper, obey his discipline. Not allowed to complain, not allowed to show displeasure, not allowed to walk away, or else I am in the wrong. This isn't called being a bride-to-be, this is being a servant. Pei Heng's face darkened. I never thought of it that way. I simply hate it when things are like this. Do you think I enjoy it? It's all because for the past 2 years, you haven't been willing to handle this trouble. If you had been willing to settle this matter, Zhao Sanyang would never have dared to act out against me today. In the end, the root cause is that you gave outsiders the impression that your fiancé can be bullied at will. If outsiders don't take me seriously, naturally, they won't take you seriously either. You are the one who doesn't understand the meaning of shared honor and disgrace. That is why I don't want to be your shield. You haven't treated me well at all. While I am still a young, beautiful, and healthy maiden, you aren't even willing to help me resolve my troubles. If I were to fall apart or lose an arm or a leg, you would surely join those outsiders to gang up on me. Pei Heng, I don't trust you. Pei Heng's index finger gripped the wheelchair handle tightly. You actually see me that way. I rolled my eyes hard. Shouldn't I think this way? The gifts I've sent to your estate over the past 2 years might as well have been fed to the dogs. I turned my head and mocked him. I was just blinded by the petty benefits you gave me, which is why I ignored the trouble Zhao Sanyang caused. That is why I felt you were suffering and tolerated everything you did. You have talent and power. Material things to you are the easiest things to come by. Time, energy, and patience. For you, these are the truly precious things. You never gave me the things that were most precious to you, so don't even think about trying to take what is most precious to me. 2 years, a full 2 years. Zhao Sanyang has belittled me countless times, and yet you turn your back the moment you encounter it once. I have every right to be sulking. Upon arriving at the Crown Prince's residence, the Crown Prince came out to greet us himself. His health was still frail, and he couldn't stop coughing, yet he still reached out to take the wheelchair from me. Pushing Pei Heng himself, the Crown Prince said softly to comfort him, Aheng, don't worry. The Emperor will surely find out who poisoned you. I will never forgive them. Pei Heng reached out and pressed down on the Crown Prince's hand. Big brother, this wheelchair is too heavy. Let someone else push it. Your health hasn't fully recovered yet. It is no trouble. I still have enough strength to push you. Pei Heng kept his head bowed low, looking deeply troubled. As soon as he reached the side of the male guest, it immediately caused quite a stir. Prince Chen, who had always been at odds with him, stood up. I thought that since Third Imperial Brother's legs were inconvenient, you wouldn't come. I didn't expect you to actually show up. It shows that even though Third Imperial Brother is physically disabled, you are still very concerned about the Crown Prince's affairs. However, to see one of our own wearing a mask, is that not showing a complete lack of respect for us brothers? The Crown Prince sternly rebuked Prince Chen, but Prince Chen didn't take it to heart at all. He poured himself 3 cups of wine as a penalty, still wearing that smug, triumphant look. Pei Heng hung his head even lower, looking exactly like a beaten stray dog. I enjoyed watching him like this with great satisfaction, then turned and headed toward the lady's side, where I actually reaped a wave of sympathy. No one would ever whisper behind my back again that I was just climbing the social ladder. Now, they all say I'm a miserable woman instead, and they keep advising me to look on the bright side. Life, after all, is pretty much the same regardless of who you're with. I played along, putting on a look of utter despair. How could it possibly be the same? I will never have children of my own in this life. Oh, is that really true? Could it be that Prince Rui is truly? I nodded vigorously. Yes, I'm destined to live as a widow in all but name. Haha. By the time Pei Heng came to find me, he was met with the entire courtyard's unconcealed contempt and pity. He pressed his lips together, looking deeply embarrassed. What kind of nonsense were you spouting just now? I told them you couldn't have children. As I pushed his wheelchair to leave, I told him the truth. Pei Heng was so angry he gritted his teeth. Song Yuhui, it must be my great fortune to have met you. I looked at him with feigned surprise. I'm clearly helping you here. Ever since you became a cripple, the number of assassins coming for you has dropped by half. If you're now incapable of having children too, people will look at you even less. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Pei Heng retorted, furious. You call this a good thing? They don't even treat me like a human being anymore. Ha ha ha, are you getting anxious? I stopped pushing the wheelchair and circled around him, admiring his deeply frustrated expression. Your Highness, you've only been a cripple for a few days, and you already can't handle these rumors? Besides, you're only faking this disability. If you were truly in this state, can you guarantee that in such a situation, you wouldn't be resentful, bitter, or regretful? Since you couldn't do it yourself, you shouldn't be blaming me, and you certainly shouldn't have dragged me into this dangerous situation. Pei Heng finally went silent. We both just stared quietly at the lotus pond. The tiny lotus bud has just revealed its tip. A dragonfly already stands upon it. A gentle breeze blew by, causing the lotus leaves to sway softly on the water. The wind also stirred our already chaotic thoughts. After a long while, Pei Heng spoke softly. I'm sorry. I will call off this engagement as soon as possible. Don't do that. Don't be in such a rush to break it off. I'm begging you. Could you please consider my position for a moment? If you break the engagement now, not only will people call me a social climber, but my father's career in the emperor's court would be severely affected. My mother wouldn't even be able to show her face in public. I've already gone through 2 life-threatening assassination attempts with you. I'm not your enemy. There is no need to sabotage me like this. Wait until you don't have to fake your illness anymore. Then we can talk about the engagement, okay? The current emperor is truly a rare and virtuous ruler, and he truly loves his sons. If I really dared to break off the engagement to Prince Rui at this juncture, my father's career would certainly be over, and my whole family might really be finished as well. Pei Heng gave a soft hum. It was his way of agreeing. His eyelashes drooped slightly. His eyes and brows were filled with undisguisable disappointment. Even while wearing a mask, one could still deeply feel the frustration of his unfulfilled ambitions. I felt it was necessary to quickly soothe his current mood, lest he suddenly lose his temper and find some way to get back at me later. Just like that damn system, which so abruptly and forcibly took my dear sister away. I softened my tone, coaxing him gently. You really should try to look on the bright side. At the very least, others are now too lazy to spend energy trying to harm you. Don't you think that makes sense? Besides, you'll also gain a sincere friendship from me. I will try my best to be your good friend. Actually, this was all a lie. Once I successfully break off our engagement, I'll immediately pack my bags and head to my grandfather's house. I'll find a man I like there and settle down. I must find a way to stay far away from this chaotic hellhole of a capital city. Whichever concubine he wants to favor later, or how many children he wants to have with them, will have absolutely nothing to do with me. Just as I was lost in these thoughts, a sudden burst of chaotic footsteps approached from not far away. I turned my head to look and saw Prince Chen leading a large crowd, marching imposingly toward us. When Prince Chen reached us, he finally stopped. He glared at Pei Heng and me and said coldly, Prince Rui, you dare to plot against the crown prince. Guards, seize them both at once. Pei Heng shot me a look of mild reproach. Is this what you meant earlier, when you said no one would harm me anymore? I couldn't help but roll my eyes internally, and retorted through gritted teeth. There is another old saying about beating a dog that has fallen into the water. Your current situation is that of the drowning dog. I'm the one who's truly been dragged down by you. You should be the one apologizing to me first. Pei Heng's voice sounded very dejected. I'm sorry. I was stunned on the spot. Why wasn't he being stubborn anymore? He should have been stubborn to the end, so that it would be even easier for me to justify my dislike for him. This cunning, wretched man wasn't playing by the rules at all. The crown prince is in a coma due to poisoning. The imperial physician rambled on and on. I only remembered one key point. The poison was smeared on Pei Heng's wheelchair. This poison is colorless and odorless, and for an ordinary person in good health, it wouldn't have any effect at all. But for the crown prince, whose health was already very fragile, it was absolutely lethal. The physician had detected the poison directly from the crown prince's hands. Today, to show his support for Pei Heng, the crown prince took him everywhere, even doing everything himself, personally pushing Pei Heng's wheelchair, and because of that, the crown prince was heavily poisoned. I said it before, your deliberate closeness to the crown princes must have been with malicious intent. Now that the truth is out, what else do you have to say? Pei Heng countered with a cold face. I am already a cripple now. Plotting against the crown prince, what possible benefit could that bring me? Prince Chen sneered, his tone filled with arrogant certainty. What if your paralysis from the poison was just a play you directed yourself? And you have been holding the antidote all along? Yes, holding it all along. Prince Chen clapped his hands forcefully and ordered a doctor carrying a medicine chest to be brought forward. My heart sank instantly, because that doctor was the very one Pei Heng specifically found and kept in his room, the physician responsible for checking his medicinal soups every day. I just don't know when this person was secretly bought off by Prince Chen. The physician knelt on the ground, trembling all over, and said, this commoner is usually responsible for serving Prince Rui his medicine. One day, this commoner suddenly smelled a very peculiar scent in the room. Later, this commoner secretly memorized the ingredients of those herbs I smelled, and discovered that those herbs could be used to treat the poison in Prince Rui's body. This is enough to prove that Prince Rui actually had the antidote to his own poison in his hands all along, but he kept delaying and refused to use it. I think this must be the butterfly effect that my sister once mentioned. Just because of a casual remark I made back then, I unexpectedly changed Pei Heng's decision. He did listen to my words and didn't get poisoned by anything else, but his scheme of faking an illness was completely exposed because of it. Prince Chen laughed, becoming increasingly smug. Third imperial brother, with both human and material evidence present. What else do you have to say for yourself? Pei Heng's eyes were filled with despair. He subconsciously turned his head to look at me, but just as his neck turned halfway, he forcibly restrained his movement. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes to calm himself, and when he opened them again, he looked straight at the sorrowful crown princess. Sister-in-law, the reason I have been faking illness is simply to avoid being targeted by others, and even more so to avoid being dragged into those cruel struggles for imperial power. I absolutely did not harm the crown prince. He has always been the person I admire most. If I didn't do it, I will absolutely never admit to it. You are welcome to investigate this matter thoroughly. I will stay right here and wait for the verdict. The crown princess looked at him with a deep gaze, forcibly suppressing the sorrow in her heart, and said in a steady voice, "This palace absolutely does not believe that this matter was done by the third brother. Samani, report this to the emperor immediately. Request the 3 judicial offices to investigate carefully. We must find the true culprit behind the scenes." Seeing this, Prince Chen became somewhat anxious and hurriedly stepped forward to argue with the crown princess. The crown princess, however, remained unmoved, firmly demanding a thorough reinvestigation. Everyone around was arguing back and forth, and the scene suddenly became chaotic. My gaze remained tightly fixed on Pei Heng. I pondered to myself, this might be the key moment my sister once described, where I would voluntarily step forward to take the blame for Pei Heng. If I truly loved Pei Heng deeply, perhaps I really would step forward without hesitation, taking all the blame upon myself, so that he could investigate the truth without any worries. And after the truth was revealed, he would clear my name. By that time, I would surely have suffered all kinds of hardships, and Pei Heng would certainly be deeply grateful to me, keeping it in his heart forever. We might truly become a pair of star-crossed lovers who shared adversity, but we might not necessarily share in wealth and glory later. It is like someone who suddenly comes into a fortune, happily moving into a new home. The first things they want to throw away are often the old worn-out items from their past. Moving from an old environment to a new one, the old people and things from before instantly start to feel out of place. It is easy to be heartless and throw away objects, but people are not so easily discarded, because it involves many moral constraints. But once the thought of abandonment enters one's heart, they will always find various seemingly reasonable excuses to successfully convince themselves. Seeing that he really couldn't persuade the crown princess to change her mind, Prince Chen immediately shifted his focus, pointing his spear directly at me. Even if the third prince is currently unable to move and truly incapable of acting himself, doesn't he still have that Miss Song, who is deeply in love with him, by his side? I hear Miss Song is willing to share the third prince's hardships with him. I'm afraid for the sake of the third prince, there is nothing she wouldn't be willing to do, is there? I clenched my fists tightly, so angry I could have ground my teeth to dust. This damned wretched man must have been born just to spite me. Fifth brother, you had best not go too far. As for the messy business between us brothers, stop dragging innocent people into it here. Huh. Third brother, why are you getting so worked up? If this Miss Song is truly innocent, then she will naturally be released unharmed later. Pimp. If her hands are dirty, then I haven't caught the wrong person, have I? Guards, seize this Miss Song for me at once. Throw her straight into the dungeon. I was speechless for a moment. I knew full well in my heart that as long as I was involved with Pei Heng, nothing good would ever happen this time. Although I didn't step forward to take the blame for him, I had already been dragged deep into this whirlpool. After all, I was the one who had been pushing Pei Heng's wheelchair all day. There were absolutely countless opportunities for me to secretly poison him. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration crossed my mind. I raised my voice and said clearly, "Wait, hold your hands. Imperial physician, could you please check my hands first, to see if there is any trace of poison on them?" The physician turned to look at the crown princess. The crown princess nodded slightly in agreement. Several physicians walked toward me with grave expressions, signaling for me to dip my hands into a basin of clear water. However, the water in the basin did not change color in the slightest. The physicians exchanged glances and then gave their definitive findings. Miss Song's hands are not stained with any poison. I let out a long, silent sigh of relief. I had guessed right. All day long it had been me, pushing Prince Rui's wheelchair, until the crown prince took over himself. If it were truly as everyone suspected, that Prince Rui and I conspired to poison him, then my hands would have in any case been stained with some poison, but the facts proved that my hands were clean, without any trace of poison. Ever since I entered this garden, I have been under everyone's watchful eyes. I didn't even have the time to wash my hands to destroy evidence. Many people present can testify to this for me. Prince Ru, since the Crown Prince took over your wheelchair, did you ever leave the Crown Prince's sight? Pei Heng reacted immediately and answered loudly, I did go to freshen up once. A young eunuch led me there at the time. Crown Prince brother waited outside the whole time and did not follow me in. Go find that eunuch who led the way, quickly. Prince Chen's face turned deathly pale, a flicker of uncontrollable panic flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something to defend himself. No one here is allowed to move about freely. Anyone who dares to move without permission will be treated as an accomplice in the plot against the Crown Prince. He immediately ordered his trusted aides to go find that young eunuch. Then, he swept his stern gaze across the faces of everyone present. Later, that young eunuch who led the way was finally found. And after that, Prince Chen and those few princes who usually colluded with him were all taken into custody one by one. Prince Rui went into the palace as ordered. I returned home and fell onto my bed, exhausted, and fell asleep. I was suddenly startled awake in the middle of the night, and then I couldn't fall back asleep at all. I threw on a robe and got up. Just as I pushed open the window, I saw a figure standing quietly under the magnolia tree outside my window, head bowed, wondering what was on his mind. I was truly startled. Just as I was about to cry out, he looked up. The bright moonlight spilled onto his face. It was Pei Heng. Yuhui, don't scream. I just came from the palace. I really couldn't sleep, so I wanted to come over and talk to you. I happened to be quite curious about how the emperor dealt with his sons, so I kept my mouth shut and listened to him quietly. Pei Heng told me that the emperor was truly furious this time. The emperor had always believed that his sons, even if they weren't inseparable, were at least brotherly and respectful. He never imagined that behind his back they had already reached the point of fighting to the death. In truth, he was a good father. He knew how cruel and brutal the struggle for the throne could be. So before the empress gave birth to the eldest son, he didn't let any other concubine become pregnant. As soon as the eldest son was born, he immediately named him Crown Prince and raised him by his side with great care, thoroughly extinguishing the inappropriate ambitions of the other concubines. It is a pity that perhaps because he was raised too delicately and carefully, the Crown Prince's health was never very good. Later, he became increasingly frail. The hidden ambitions of the other princes gradually began to surface. The emperor had actually sensed this long ago. He felt that a bit of healthy competition between the princes wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was a chance for him to observe them, in case the Crown Prince were to pass away early, to see who was better suited to be the next heir. But now, they had the audacity to reach directly into the Crown Prince's residence, even attempting to kill two birds with one stone by getting rid of both the Crown Prince and Pei Heng. This completely crossed the emperor's bottom line. His own sons, whom he couldn't bear to harm, were actually slaughtering each other in the shadows. The emperor punished Prince Chen and the other involved princes severely. He stripped Prince Chen of his title, demoted him to a commoner, and exiled him 3,000 miles away. The other princes who participated were also stripped of their titles, and all were placed under house arrest, waiting until the new emperor ascends the throne and the government is fully stabilized to see what the new emperor decides regarding whether to release them. In the end, he still couldn't bear to kill his own flesh and blood. As for Pei Heng, the emperor scolded him severely, blaming him for faking an illness, causing his loved ones to worry for nothing. His Majesty asked me to my face if I had any heart, if I truly cared about them, my own flesh and blood. Actually, I wanted to ask him that same question. Though they say the imperial family is the most heartless, is there really not a single person in his home that he truly cares for? Pei Heng smiled bitterly and said, to tell you the truth, before this happened, I never really trusted the emperor, nor did I trust the Crown Prince. I always felt the emperor was biased, that his eyes were only on the Crown Prince. Although I always stayed close to the Crown Prince's side, in my heart I couldn't help but envy him. Sometimes I would even secretly think how wonderful it would be if the Crown Prince didn't exist in this world at all. I even felt that the kindness he showed me was all just a hypocritical act. But today, after the Crown Prince woke from his coma, the first thing he said was, "This was definitely not done by my third brother. Father, please do not wrong an innocent man." Under the cold moonlight, tears shimmered in Pei Heng's eyes. He remained silent for a long time, without saying another word. After a very long while, he finally spoke in a low, hoarse voice. "The Crown Prince is the true gentleman, kind, benevolent, and concerned for the world. As for me, I am merely a selfish and despicable man. Yuhui, you were right before. If I cannot even manage to do good deeds myself without calculating my own gains and future, then I have no right to criticize others for being overly cautious or for seeking their own advancement from me. Your choice not to be with me was the right one. He slowly took 2 steps forward, walking right up to my window. He must have already taken the antidote, as the red spots on his face had faded away, leaving only a few small marks. Surely it wouldn't be long before he fully recovered. He reached out his hand and gently stroked my hair, his eyes filled with a surging complex emotion. I was startled by his sudden movement. I should have stepped back immediately, but my intuition told me that it would be better to quietly listen to what he had to say from the heart. His fingers brushed gently across my cheek, then lightly grazed my lips, and then he paused for a moment before reluctantly pulling his hand away, his fingers clenching tightly at his side. By tomorrow, you will have your wish. Tonight, just stay with me and sit quietly for a while. Let's just have a good talk. Would you? The words my sister once said echoed in my mind once again. If you can win the fight, fight hard. If you can't win, run away quickly. And if you can't even outrun them, then quickly concede. Once you've safely escaped, you can always find a way to get your revenge later. I immediately softened my voice and replied, all right. And so I sat with him on the rockery in the courtyard. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse, and the night breeze was cool as water. Pei Heng spoke to me, off and on, about so many things. He started from the day we first met. He said he was deeply struck by me then, secretly marveling to himself, how can there be such a beautiful and moving girl in this world? Later, when he secretly found out that I was the precious daughter of Grand Secretary Song and that my mother was also from a noble family, he was even more delighted, feeling that this was simply a wonderful match bestowed by the heavens. There wasn't even any of that common obstacle of social status between us, and so it was only natural that we met and fell in love. He had always firmly believed that this was a fate ordained by heaven, until later, when I suddenly changed my temperament. He felt that although I was still me, I seemed to no longer be entirely myself. Why was it that back then, you just refused to go to Wan'an Temple with me? The alarm bells in my heart rang instantly. Could it be that this third prince still hasn't given up on me even now? I had to think of a foolproof way to completely dispel this absurd notion of his. It is not that I don't like going to Wan'an Temple to burn incense and pray. I just don't like being treated by you like an object to be arranged at will. We are currently only fiancés, nothing more. Yet, you dare to casually arrange for me to go where I don't want to go. If I were to truly marry you in the future, you would only become even more overbearing, arranging my life with even more self-righteousness. My personal wishes to you are of no importance at all. If that were truly the case, then I would no longer be your wife, but rather your personal maid. A husband and wife should respect each other, respecting each other, and discussing things together when issues arise. You have long been accustomed to being a high and mighty prince, ordering others around. You have never learned how to truly be a considerate husband. The reason I jumped off the carriage regardless of the danger that day was actually to express my resistance to you. If I hadn't chosen to resist back then, the moment I compromised once, I would have been forced to compromise countless times in the future. I am very glad that I bravely chose to resist at that time. Only in this way can you truly face the problems that exist between the two of us. Otherwise, you would have eventually turned me into someone so strange that even I wouldn't recognize myself. If I had really become that person, would I still be the vibrant song Yuhui that you first met? My parents raised me well since I was a child, but Pei Heng, you would only make my life a complete mess. Neither of us spoke again. Later on, I was so sleepy, I couldn't keep my eyes open. Pei Heng very gently pressed my head against his broad shoulder. I thought in my daze, since I can't resist him right now anyway, I might as well just enjoy this moment of peace with a clear conscience. Dawn finally broke. When I woke up, I found myself lying comfortably in my own bed, while Pei Heng was nowhere to be found. I quickly jumped out of bed barefoot and ran in a panic to find my mother for help. Mother, please quickly arrange for some skilled female bodyguards for me and have my courtyard tightly surrounded. Ensure that not even a fly can get in. Then, hurry and find someone to move all the trees in the courtyard to somewhere else. I must ensure my courtyard has a wide view, completely unobstructed, so those assassins won't even find a corner to hide in. My mother was standing there, furiously winking at me. Only then did I quickly shut my mouth. I turned my head and saw in the reception hall my father sitting there looking extremely awkward, and sitting in the seat of honor was Pei Heng. The room was filled with eunuchs and palace maids. My mother's eyes were twitching uncontrollably. She watched helplessly as I walked in with a bird's nest of messy hair, looking completely disheveled. She gave me a huge, helpless eye roll. Pei Heng was glaring at me fiercely. He probably thought that last night was so romantic that he had poured his heart out to me, saying all those deeply moving, sincere words, and that I should have been moved to tears. But instead, I turned around and treated him like a thief, guarding against him strictly. He was probably so angry he could have died. I could only offer him an awkward smile, gave a messy bow, and planned to slip away as fast as possible. The head eunuch smiled and said, "Since Miss Song has arrived, please receive the imperial decree. I would like to finish reading the decree." so I can return to report back." Our whole family quickly knelt down in a rush. Pei Heng reached out and took the decree. "I shall read it myself." The emperor issued a decree to annul my engagement to Pei Heng, letting us go our separate ways, having nothing more to do with each other. The generous betrothal gifts previously sent to the Song family would all serve as compensation for me. The decree was filled with flowery, flattering words, making me feel guilty and ashamed. When he read my name, Pei Heng's voice became noticeably hoarse and low. After he finished reading the final, "Thus it is decreed," he slowly handed the decree toward me. I reached out to take it, but his fingers were curled tightly, clutching the decree firmly, refusing to let go. I secretly used a bit of leverage and forcefully yanked the decree from his hands. Pei Heng's eyes turned red instantly. He lowered his voice, asked me angrily, "You little liar, you never wanted to be friends with me at all." I gave him a look that seemed incredibly honest and innocent. "Your Highness, how could that be? I've always been the most honest person, and I never lied to anyone. I will always be your Highness's good friend. However, whether these two good friends will ever be able to meet again is really hard to say." Hehehe. Pei Heng let out a cold snort, flicked his sleeves, and left in a huff. Later on, my grandfather fell ill. To be honest, it was just a common cold, but I deliberately had this. News spread all over the city until everyone knew about it. I intentionally made his condition sound ambiguous and very serious. Then, I had a perfectly valid reason to board a passenger ship to Yanzhou. I claimed I was going to fulfill my filial duty for my mother, to serve medicine to my grandfather in person. Others just assumed I was heartbroken, which is why I chose to leave the capital, this place of sorrow, to heal on my own. Only Pei Heng knew clearly that I was doing this to completely escape the drama of the capital so I could live a carefree life on my own. On the very day I left the capital, he actually chased after my ship, riding his horse along the bank for several miles. The other passengers on the boat, who knew nothing, were all praising him for being so devoted. But I was so annoyed my teeth itched. Why couldn't this guy just leave me alone? With him making such a big scene, how am I supposed to find a man in Chongzhou with peace of mind? When the ship reached the narrowest part of the waterway, the distance between him on the bank suddenly became very, very close. Pei Heng stared intensely into my eyes and shouted at me at the top of his lungs, "Song Yuhui, take care of yourself on your journey. Someday, I will come to Yanzhou to see you myself." I clenched my fists hidden inside my sleeves, but forced an incredibly gentle smile onto my face. "Your Highness, you must take care of yourself too. We'll meet again someday, though I think it is best if we never see each other again." He just stood there on the bank, all alone, holding his horse, watching as my ship gradually sailed into the depths of the misty river. I gazed at his face, which became increasingly blurred in my eyes, until it finally merged with the river scenery, the willow trees, and the embankment, turning into a poignant painting of a farewell by the river. I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss in my heart. I suddenly missed my sister. I couldn't help but ask myself, is this really the ending I wanted? I didn't know. The road ahead is still far away, but it is also right beneath my feet. I'll just take it one step at a time. I spent 2 very happy years in Yanzhou. Yanzhou is wealthy, and the people are simple and honest, unlike the capital which has so many rigid rules. My grandparents introduced me to many local young talents. Some were handsome, some were incredibly talented, but I realized with regret that they were much like the old Pei Heng. They only wanted a submissive wife, preferably from a prestigious family with great talent, someone who would make them look good in public and handle all the chores at home. But they didn't care at all about what I thought or what kind of life I wanted to lead. The more I interacted with them, the more pointless it felt. Meanwhile, a major change occurred in the capital. Prince Ru found a miracle doctor who cured the crown prince's chronic illness. Prince Rui was very respectful to his brother, accompanying the crown prince to ride and shoot. The crown prince made a full recovery, and he and the crown princess safely welcomed a son. The emperor was overjoyed. "Prince Ru, what is it that you desire? Your son requests to live in his fief, to be a carefree prince. Without an imperial decree, I shall never return to the capital again." Hearing this news, I felt deeply moved. I am no longer the heroine of a tragic drama, and he is no longer the male lead. Ever since the day I remembered my sister, our destinies have changed completely. I am very fond of this change. I hope everyone can have a good start, and in the end achieve a perfect conclusion. By the spring of the following year, I went on an outing with a close friend. She had a secret crush on a young gentleman, and with a heart full of girlish dreams, she shyly cast him longing glances. The young man's ears turned completely red, his eyes darting about in a panic, daring only to stare at the tips of his shoes. When he finally mustered the courage to steal a glance at my friend, and their eyes met, he looked as if he'd been startled, quickly looking away. Both of them were so shy, acting so coy, full of tender affection. Watching from the side, I couldn't help but smile with immense satisfaction. attraction. Under the spring sun, Samani led their horse slowly across the grass toward me. Pei Heng stared at me without blinking, as if he wanted to etch my entire being into his eyes. I straightened my posture and turned to look at him, a smile on my face. I had long guessed that on his way to his fief, he would detour to Yanzhou to see me. I had guessed correctly. Pei Heng stood right in front of me, blocking the sunlight that had been on me, enveloping me entirely in his shadow. His lips were dry, his face full of exhaustion, and his voice was a bit hoarse. Song Yuhui, I've come to see you. I have to stay in my fief from now on, and won't be able to leave as I please. Will you come to see me? His eyes were a little red, his expression very tense, the grievance in his eyes intense and sincere. I smiled gently and whispered, I will come to see you. My sister told me not to be a lovesick fool, but she didn't tell me to never fall in love again. A man I personally molded. How could I just casually give him away to someone else? After all, properly molding a person is truly no easy task, especially when he is quite intuitive himself. Pei Heng was overjoyed to hear this. He pulled me into a tight embrace, muttering my name over and over with his head bowed. Yuhui. His words filled with deep affection. Longing has long since settled into my bones. The corners of my mouth lifted gently, looking back at the low points of the past. Now the clouds have parted and the mist has cleared, ushering in a beautiful love.